Hey guys, it's Casey and welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my bed. Welcome to another vlog. Today is another vlog day and it is currently 11 a.m. which makes vlogging a little bit hard and sounds like a very unreasonable time to still be languishing in my bed on a Friday morning. However, I didn't get home from work until 6:30, which means that I didn't go to bed until after 7. So really, it's not even a full 4 hours sleep yet. And I've got a lot of things to talk about, but in order to do that, I first and foremost must get out of bed. Hello. Because of the time of morning that it's almost lunchtime as it is, I am going to bypass breakfast this morning and I'm just going to eat this scone. I've already eaten one piece of it. Because I got I got a scone and I got a piece of hummingbird cake that I think someone, probably Nate, already ate half of. Because it's like a quarter of a cake left and I haven't had any yet. It looks really, really good though. But just to be able to get through these before they go stale, I'm just bypassing breakfast and going straight onto morning tea. So, the reason why I was home so late from work last night is that I had to do surgery. And if you've ever watched my videos before, then you know damn well that surgery is my least favorite thing, my least favorite medical procedure in the entire world to do. And then as the icing on top of the cake, as if that wasn't bad enough just having to do surgery in the first place, the type of surgery that I had to do was my least favorite type of surgery to do, which is I had to reattach a limb. More specifically, I had to reattach a fingertip in the most unorthodox way imaginable, in that the fingertip was ripped off said finger at like 7 a.m. yesterday morning, and the person who did it didn't think to bring said fingertip to the hospital until about 11 o'clock last night. Because, you know, he didn't want to have to interrupt his motorcycle trip, his dirt bike trip that he was taking. And so when it came off in a freak accident, he just put it in an esky, an icebox, and left it there to wilter and go necrotic all day. So he brings it in, I look at it, and I can see that it's not in a good shape, right? And typically when this kind of thing occurs in my town, we call up the flying doctor service and they send a plane out to come and grab said finger and patient and take them back to the city to a more qualified plastic surgeon. However, this finger was not going to make it, especially because this flight, it's the middle of the night. They usually only have 1 or 2 doctors on call during the night, and this wouldn't have been classified as a category 1 emergency, so they probably wouldn't have got out here until this morning anyway. And by that point in time, the finger, when it came in, was already in a very bad shape. It had blood flow, the tissue was still alive, but it was on life support. And so I told the guy, I'm like, listen, I don't think there's a lot we can do here. He's like, well, you can try. I'm like, I can try, yes, but it's probably not going to work out very well. Not least of all, attaching a limb is a very, very complex surgery. There are a lot of nerves and blood vessels that you need to reconnect involved, and I just do not have the dexterity for it. I didn't have the dexterity for it before my traumatic brain injury. I really seriously do not now. But this guy was insistent that we try. And I was like, you know what? Okay. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I am the stupid prize, because the reality is that I don't think I can be sued one way or another because of the treaty that I'm under, the conditions of the treaty that I'm under as a stateless person. I don't think that I can personally be sued. People have tried to sue me a couple of times in the past, in the last several years that I've been working here. And they've gone to the medical board to put in complaints to try to get my license taken away. But there are 2 things at play here. One, the treaty, and also where we live, where we practice, the community that we serve. It's impossible to get other doctors out here. Like, it's a very, very hard recruitment area. That's why they have to send us so many students. So I always joke, and it's not even really a joke, it's reality, that we could quite literally get caught selling organs illegally on the black market, and the worst that we would get is a slap on the wrist. anything south of murder, I think that they would just turn a blind eye towards just because we are so impossible to replace. So, you know what? If you're that insistent, if you're gonna get abusive about it, I'll take a whack at it. But let me tell you, the reality is that in a week you're gonna come back, your finger's gonna be black, you're gonna be in agony, I'm gonna have to cut it off. Either way. And then we can fix it then. But if you are that insistent that we give it a try, I will give it a try. It's going to be a poor attempt because I only know how to attach limbs poorly. But if that's what you want, if you want to put your life on the line for sepsis in that way, go ahead. It makes no difference to me. But that's the reason why I have woken up so late today. I wanted to film this vlog. I wanted to get up at like 8:30 and film this vlog, but it just didn't happen. And so I still got a lot to do today. I need to go down to the market. I need to buy some fresh deli ham from said market. I need to go to Cal's because I said that I would bring her some fresh deli ham. Nate's going to come over later tonight. We have a movie to watch. He's making dinner, which is very, very nice because it means that I don't have to mess my kitchen up even more than it is. And I'm going to talk about, one, why I now own every single book that has ever been written. And two, I want to talk about mine and Nate's awkward connection to hantavirus. And so, let's do it. On Monday this week, I gained access officially to every single book that has ever been written from the dawn of time through May 2026, which is a lot of books. It's a lot of books. And I will get into the reasons why I now have access to that library later on in this video, but for right now, I want to discuss the very first thing that I used my free will and state of mind to do upon gaining access to every single book that has ever been written. And that is, I used said free will to research paganism, neo-paganism specifically, or modern witchcraft as it's more commonly referred to these days. A lot of criticisms of neo-paganism, not so much the ideology itself, even though I do think that it is intentionally anti-intellectual in that it chooses to just ignore the science behind why people used to do the things that they did. For example, taking bay leaves for protection. In order to make that work, you need to ignore all the scientific discoveries that have been made since the 15th century. Because the reasons why people said that bay leaves were a form of protection in the 15th century is that they recognized cause and effect. So by putting bay leaves in their walls, which I've got bay leaves in my walls over there because they are very, very good for this exact reason. By putting bay leaves in your walls, you deterred rodents because rodents don't like the oils that bay leaves give off. And so they didn't understand the science behind it, but they recognized that the cause, putting bay leaves in your walls and around your house, kept rodents away and thus decreased illness. So in order to make that work in a 2026 context, bay leaves are for protection, you need to forego the entire scientific portfolio that has been created since that date. But I don't even really have an issue with that. I do think that most people in the modern West are inherently not intellectual. So I can't really take issue with that. No, what I take issue with is that I think neo-paganism in its current state is just a capitalistic, exploitive, LARPing hellscape that targets vulnerable women who almost exclusively are at risk of being dragged into something like this because they are leaving organized patriarchal religions, and so they've been raised that you need this structure within your life in order to function correctly. And so they are primed to, again, be taken advantage of in that way because they have that structure, they have that core belief system, and they're looking for somewhere to push that energy towards. And then here come these scam artists, because that's what they are, to sell this dream of, internal power, and you are your own god, and there are these women gods that you can pray to, and they will fulfill your greatest desires, and all you need to do is buy my $300 book and all these products that you can only buy in my TikTok storefront and things like that. I just think it's absolutely horrendous, and I always feel really dorky, but Simba pots are a big part of my culture, and it's not my fault, okay? It is not my fault that neo-paganism has sunk its dirty, oversized, overly manicured claws into it and turned it into something that it's not, and exploited it, again, for a quick buck. And A came through, which is not a surprise. If you recall correctly, I was complaining a couple of vlogs ago that I wanted to get some sea buckthorn oil, but it was incredibly difficult to source here because nobody in the modern West uses it. And so he said that he was sending me a bottle. He was like, yeah, okay, I will believe it when I see it because it's next to impossible to buy here. But no, he sent me an Australian-owned and Australian-made brand in this cute, very fancy black box. Very nice, demure, glass bottle, stained glass bottle. And I looked at it, and as much as I am happy to have it, I couldn't help but note that this company did not exist 2 weeks ago, which always really annoys me. And I called him up and I said, this company did not exist 2 weeks ago. I know that for a fact because I spent about 3 days searching for an easily accessible bottle of sea buckthorn oil. And he said, well, if you don't want it, you can always just gift it to someone else. I'm like, no, I want it. I'm just pointing out the obvious that the company didn't exist. Hello, welcome back. There is a new development in my life that we need to discuss. A very exciting development, I guess you could say, and that is that you are currently listening to, watching in the virtual presence of the owner of every single book that has ever been written from the dawn of time through May 2026. Huzzah! So this came about in a very peculiar way, a very odd way, and that is that in my fit of misery, my blooming despair, I contacted the only person who could be held responsible for my state of mind at that point in time, and we spent the entirety of Monday in a verbal altercation. The result of that is that he granted me access to every single book that has ever been written, ever. I'm not going to actually explain exactly why he did what he did and why he's granted me this gift. All I'm going to say is that it was not an act of kindness. It was him proving a point. But just because it was not intended to be an act of kindness does not mean that we can't take full advantage of the situation, because I do have some plans in mind. I have some thoughts. Last month, so April, I spent almost $600 on books. That is a lot of money to be spending on a bunch of papers. And yet, when I look at the pile of books that I have, I still feel like I have absolutely nothing. I certainly have hundreds upon hundreds of books on my TBR, both my physical TBR and my Goodreads TBR, that I'm very excited to read, but money has always been the stumbling point there. I've always had to be like Sophie and Sophie's Choice and pick which exactly book I want to buy and leave behind the others, even though they also call to me. And so I intend to take full advantage of this gift in a certain kind of way, and that kind of way is that I intend to develop a new system in which I'm going to put all the names of all the books that I want to read on a spinny wheel that's going to pick one for me. I'm going to go on Goodreads, I'm going to go on Amazon, I'm going to go to my bookshelf, and I'm going to look at every single book that I have ever bookmarked as me wanting to read it. And I'm going to take note of the book's name and the book's author's name, and I'm going to put them on one of those apps that have a wheel that you spin and it picks a book for you. And that's what I'm going to do every single week until the TBR is finished. I'm going to pick a new book and I'm going to read it. Because one of the huge problems of having access to even the amount of books that I physically own, let alone every single book in the history of the world, is that you kind of become overwhelmed with choices and you forget which choices are available to you. Now, if I have chosen to add a book to one of those lists at some point in time, it's because I thought the book sounded interesting enough and I thought that I might like to read it at some point in time. However, money has always been the stumbling block there, in that it kind of limits you in what you can read and how much you can read. But now that stumbling block has been torn away from me. Again, not through kindness, but kind of as intended to be a punishment. I refuse to see it as a punishment. And so I'm going to go online right now and I'm going to put together every single name of every single book that I have ever bookmarked, and I'm going to let the wheel decide every single week what I want to read. Now, some of these I'm quite excited to read, and some of them I'm quite scared to read because I don't know what I was thinking when I added it. But again, if I added it at some point, there's a reason why I did that. And so even though there are about 40 books that I'm like, oh, I really don't want to read that, they're going on the wheel all the same. And also, while I'm doing that, I'm going to take the opportunity to indulge in this delicious slice of hummingbird cake. I don't know what it is about all the baked goods today, because I'm actually not a huge fan of baked goods in general, but I feel like I'm on Britain's Greatest Bake Off, to be honest, today, because I have so many on hand. But this looks incredible, even though Nate already ate like half of it. It's gonna be good. Let's do it. Here you go. Here is the wheel, the completed work of the wheel. That is insane. There are about 200 books on there. It's going to take me a good 4 years to get through them at the speed of which we are planning to. As you can see, I have got a lot of books on my TBR that have ended up there because they've interested in me at some point and I've added them to said TBR, but I've either forgotten about or something else has caught my fancy and I've never returned to them. And so that's kind of the purpose of the wheel, is that it's going to get me to read more books that may not have been my first choice to pick up, but I would probably enjoy if I gave them the opportunity. I've just never had both the time or the financial resources to do so before, because you had to be picky about what books you chose. And to be honest, even with my physical TBR, it's very long. I get distracted by other books, newer books, fresher books, more out there books. And so this new goal, is to spin the wheel once a week and read whichever book it lands on during that 7-day period. Now, obviously there are going to be times in which a new book has got me really excited, and that's going to be the book that I read that week, or the book that I have rolled is not going to catch my fancy at all. I typically, as a general rule, give a book 100 pages before I DNF it, and I will continue that here, but also if after a few pages I know that there are certain structural issues, certain themes that I'm just not going to enjoy in a book, I'm not going to hesitate to DNF it. But I've got all these books. I've got about 4.5 years worth of books on that wheel. Who knows what I'm going to find? I don't even know what half these books are. They were there. I didn't click in to read the premise, but hopefully it goes well. Let's take a look. Let's see where we end up this week. Spin, 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 spin. I don't know. This might save your life. I know exactly what this book is about, and that is because it is a relatively new addition to my TBR. I don't even know why I'm saying relative. It is a brand new addition to my TBR. It's only been out for a few weeks, and so I am acutely familiar with the premise of the book, what the plot is, and that is that it is a story about a couple of podcasters who have a successful podcast that discusses and interviews people who have survived extreme survival scenarios. So anything that you might see on an episode of I Shouldn't Be Alive, that kind of scenario, shipwrecks, plane crashes, bear attacks, so on and so forth. And so they have a lot of followers, they have a lot of listeners, they have a lot of fans. This podcast is extremely successful and they do very, very well until one day one of the co-hosts arrives at the studio to film a new episode and the other co-host fails to show up. And so the co-host that we're following goes to other said co-host's house and finds that something nefarious might have happened. And so suddenly both co-hosts find themselves thrust into the kind of extreme survival scenario that they have spent years cultivating a following by discussing. So I think it'll be fun to read. From what I understand, though, it's quite a slow burn, which has me a little bit concerned in terms of I just don't have a lot of time, but, you know, I think it'll be fun. I think that I will enjoy it a lot. And it's just very interesting that that's one of the newest additions to my TBR, and it's the first one that we drew, because even if I hadn't done the wheel, I probably would have eventually gotten around to it anyway. It was probably on my to-buy list to begin with. But that's the next book that I will be reading after I finish Angel Down. So there we go. I was then off to the farmer's market because I needed to get ham. I had promised multiple people ham. And people sometimes ask how I always have nice such stuff living in the middle of nowhere. It's because of places like this. Farmer's markets, they're very beautiful, but very, very expensive. I then had to stop at Ash's house, so I patted the dogs because I also promised him ham. And while I was there, Ash's boyfriend, David, had made sourdough bread, and so I thought I would take advantage of that by making a delicious chorizo, brown sugared caramelized chorizo sandwich with camembert and veggies. And it was divine, if I do say so myself. Then it was about 2:30 p.m, and so I read my book for a while, and then it was 5 p.m. And if you've watched my channel before, you know that 5 p.m. in my culture is a big, big deal. It is the most holy hour of the day. And though I don't always do it, I decided that today I would dive into my grimoire, and that's what I did. And then it was nighttime, and Nate came over and he had cooked dinner, this delicious taco pasta bake. And we sat down and we watched our movie. It was Undertone. It was incredible. It's one of the greatest technical feats that I've seen in the modern West. And I sat down and I filmed an entire, 15-minute video about it, but decided not to include it because no one wants to listen to that. So you're welcome. Okay, well, it is 11:30 and Nate has just left because he needs to get up at 4 and go to work in the morning. Well, his shift starts at 4, so he probably needs to get up at 3, which isn't that far away. But it's 11:30. I am going to put my music on softly as not to annoy my neighbors, and I'm gonna do some of my puzzle for a little while because I've worked so many hours this week. I haven't been able to do any of it at all, and so it's been sitting there staring at me longingly all day, and now is its moment to shine.